One who identifies as free is indeed free. One who identifies as bound is indeed bound. Here, what people say is true. Whatever is one's thought or conviction, that indeed becomes one's destiny or state. This quote is from Ashtavakra Gita, chapter 1, verse 11. This scripture is basically a dialogue between King Janaka and the sage Ashtavakra. It is one of the most profound books on self-knowledge and liberation from the Vedantic tradition. It was one fine afternoon. I was traveling in metro rail, a beautiful arrangement of modern vehicular transportation, and it was a weekday, I believe. And sitting in front of me was a man, a very young man. I believe he was younger than me. It was a lazy weekdays, although the seats were full, but still empty. And in India, the number of people standing in metro are more than the people sitting on the seats. And this is how it is. And I saw this man, younger than me, and he was lost in his own thoughts. But by the judge of his face, well, I can only judge. And that's what I did. By the look on his face, I was trying to know what nature of thought he is invested in. And I saw his lips mumbled, vibrated as he was talking to someone. Or maybe he's rehearsing something. But he knew he's in the public, so he couldn't say it loud, but he was mumbling, slowly and vibrating his lips, on his own, lost in his own world, maybe arguing over someone about something, some kind of argument. And by the looks of his face, it was not a gentle argument, I believe, he was having. Struggling to keep his thought inside of his head, I can see only his lips. That's how intense the mental conversation he was having. And while I was judging, I saw his appearances. It's not, well, may I say, not up to the mark how people would judge him. Rough clothing, thumbs coming out of the shoes, about to get their freedom and coming out, and bag all bruised up and whatnot. Well, the outside appearance of his was matching what he's thinking inside his own mind, what he was arguing. But sooner, he caught me looking at him, and I knew it's my way in, so I found my way into his own mind, and I said one thing very clearly to his face: do not think what you do not want. And I knew he heard it, and he went in complete shock. It looked like he got as hanged as the computers in the old days. Eyes all opened up, lips opened up in shocks. And after a couple of seconds, once he understood the gravity of my advice, do not think what you do not want, he started laughing and said, no, I was not thinking anything. And maybe after 5 to 10 minutes, he again went to the same mental trance of the arguing, maybe to someone about someone. And that is a man. And that's the nature of every man. Whenever I ask someone, what are you imagining or talking in mind? I mean it. I simply ask them. All in all, they say, no, I'm not thinking about anything. And 5 to 10 minutes later, they again go to the same mental trance or state. And here in this podcast, if I ask the listener, do you do the same thing? Going into mental trance of imagining the exact thing which they do not wish to experience. Maybe while walking down the street, while sitting idle, or maybe sitting in the bus, waiting for someone, always and always creating thoughts in your own mind and living inside of them. I ask them, do you do the most? Most of you would definitely say no. No, we don't do it. But as soon as the realization hit, you would start agreeing with me more and more. And this is the nature of man. And if I ask or say, do not think what you do not want, you would say, well, I do not think at all in this nature. Well, if someone here on the podcast, who's listening to me, says this to me, that I really do not think what I do not want, well, it would be a marvelous thing. But being a man myself, I know the truth. But I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to tell you about very one sound investment scheme about your own life, which can transform your life beyond anything in this world can. The stock market would completely seem to be a very petty thing in front of it. And by the end of the podcast, you would know the scheme of sound investment. You would have a choice whether to execute this scheme, or just like the man in the metro I met, you completely go again in the same mental trance. But the choice is yours. Think about a basic moment in life. A young man is returning to home from the office basically. A very simple day, and yet in his mind, a war is already brewing. He imagines conversation before they even happen. If my father says this, I'll say that. He's preparing for it. Well, if my mother says this, I'll respond like this. He's preparing for the battle in the theater of his own mind, rehearsing the arguments, defending himself, strategizing against the conflicts that haven't even arisen. And that's man. And it doesn't stop there. Perhaps on the way, he still remembers a friend who he literally haven't spoken to in months. And he prepares. If they ask me why I disappeared, I'll say this or that. Will they be upset? Should I apologize or explain? He's already rehearsing his own defenses, anticipating the judgment, conjuring the tensions from the interactions that haven't yet taken place. And this is the man. Even more intimate moments are not spared. When he thinks of his partner, he imagines old unresolved disagreements. If she notices it, I forgot something again. If she noticed me that I forgot something, she'll get upset once again. So I'll have to explain. I have to defend. He's preparing her for all those arguments. And in exact those quiet moments, just before the sleep, he runs through the scene of the next day. Maybe conversation with the colleagues, the phone calls, small errands, even the neighbor he doesn't particularly like. Every interaction becomes a battlefield in his own imagination. It is all happening in the mind. And here's the truth. He wants peace. I want peace. You want peace. Every fiber of his being wants this calm and harmony and quiet evening. But the thoughts he invests in, the arguments, the defenses, and the what-ifs, the rehearsal of the confrontation, are preparing exactly the opposite. He is unknowingly building a tension, planting the seeds of conflict all before stepping through the door itself. This isn't just him. This is all of us. And this is mankind. Yet in another example you can take, a mother may be preparing a breakfast. Yet in her mind she's already replaying the argument with her teenager. She'll say, if they ignore me, in her own mind she's saying this, if they ignore me, I'll have to raise my voice. And if they snap back, I'll get angry. Similarly, a student walks to the class, maybe some kind of class, a tuition class, school class, college class. But in his own mind, he is reciting every possible embarrassment. If the teacher asks me a question, what if I freeze? What if everyone laughs? Even the simplest errands, a trip to the market, a conversation with a neighbor becomes a rehearsal of conflict, of disappointment, of worry. And this is the nature of the man. And from the moment we wake up, we invest our attention energy into what we fear, what we resist, what we literally do not want. And in the shower, or maybe on our way to work, in the casual conversations, we are running endless mental simulation of worst case scenarios. If this happens, I'll do that. If they say this, I'll respond this way. We rehearse fight all the time, the failures, the frustration, the humiliation, and all the while we say, I just want things to go well. I just want peace. So do you see the contradiction? Do not prepare for war when you want peace. But we do completely opposite of that. Well, if you tell me this, that this is not you, Well, it would be completely marvelous thing, and yet so surprising because this is what we do. We are man. We have been told in the scriptures, not mine, but your own scriptures. One who identifies as free is indeed free. One who identifies as bound is indeed bound. Here, what people say is true. Whatever is one's thought or conviction, that indeed becomes one's destiny or state. This is in the Ashtavakra Gita, chapter 1, verse 11. And we have been told in the scriptures all along what you believe you become. Well, may I say, is it any surprise we are experiencing exactly what we are rehearsing for inside of us, inside our own mind 24/7? But when I tell this to anyone, they somehow refuse to accept. They say, no, I don't do it. And then the next moment I see them, maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, I see them in the same mental trance. And this is the nature of man. So may I say, one who identifies as free is indeed free. One who identifies as bound is indeed bound. Here, what people say is true. Whatever is one's thought or conviction, that indeed becomes one's destiny or state. So it simply means what you carry, the conversation with yourself, the internal conversation in hiding, appears in the world openly. While this whole vast world is your awareness, your assumption, your belief pushed out. So what you carry within appears without, but it is all within. The private battles that you fight in your own mind, the conversation, the worries, the what ifs, always find a way to appear in your own outer life. And once you realize this fact about the life itself, you would see the exact correlation of circumstances of your own life. But you must be ready to accept it. Because without acceptance, you cannot agree. But here's the catch. A man has a poor memory, a very poor memory. He does not recall what he had performed in silence in his own mind, to which he is facing in open, and that's life. And that's the nature of life. I've been reminded of a story. When I was in corporate life, I had a friend, or as people usually call them, a colleague. But he was different from anyone I would met in the office. We talked constantly, shared lunch breaks, coffee runs, small frustrations, the dreams, and even the silly office gossips. He was someone I felt a natural connection with, you can say, far beyond the formal way of work. Now, this friend had a boss, basically, a team leader. And this leader, well, he would exactly what you would like to expect, like someone label him as a very difficult boss, a bossy, blunt and critical person. Every interaction seemed to set my friend on an edge. He dreaded meetings to go with him. He avoided eye contact and even carried a small storm of resentment inside of him, and the frustration every time his boss spoke. And I could see it in his tone, in the tension of his shoulders, in the way he braced himself for the confrontation that hadn't even ever happened. And one day I decided to share something with him, something I had been discovering about life and the mind. I said, what if the way you feel about him, what basically I meant is his thought, or maybe his expectations, are shaping his experience? What if you can change your mental investment? I asked him to imagine his boss differently, completely differently, and to feel appreciation for him, to silently think like he likes my work. I'm telling this to my friend. He respects my effort. I enjoy contributing to his team. This is what he has to entertain as a form of his internal conversation. At first, like most of the people, he laughed. And he simply said like, that's impossible. He's impossible. But I urged him to do an experiment. Just for the fun, maybe just for a week, mentally rehearse a different story, one of warmth, one of respect and goodwill. And even when nothing in the outer world has changed, I simply told him to do this one thing. But may I tell you, the transformation was astonishing. Within days, the subtle tension is diminished, softened of the team leader, of his boss. He began to greet his boss very warmly, and his boss was so fun to be around him. He complimented small things about my friend. He expressed his gratitude for the guidance and noticed positive qualities that he had never seen before. And then, like magic, or what I would like to say, the natural law of life, the outer world began to reflect. In less than a week, what had been strained formality became friendly relationship. They laughed together in the meetings, my friend and his boss basically. They shared casual jokes by the coffee machines, and invitation followed. And they started to going on different kind of, you can say, office parties where they enjoy alcohol and some good time. And by simply changing the mental investment, the inner story, my friend and his boss had become closest of close confidantes, enjoying a genuine and enjoyable relationship. And this is what I've seen right in front of my eyes. And within a week, and this was more than a corporate anecdote. It was a lesson in a plain sight. What you cultivate in your mind, the attention, the feeling, the expectation manifest in the world. The mind is not merely a reflection, it is the sculptor. And every relationship, every situation is shaped first by internal rehearsal before it appears in the outer world. And this is what I'm teaching. The investment of mind, in case of my friend, worked and gave returns within a week. And no wealth in this world can buy it. And this is the scheme I'm bringing to you, which is based on the currency of life. And that's your inner conversation. Our inner conversation, if the scripture is true, which says the one who identifies as free is indeed free, one who identifies as bound is indeed bound. Here, what people say is true. Whatever one's thought, conviction, that indeed becomes one's destiny. And it is actually the real cause of the effect of our life. A certain inner conversation, when sustained, becomes the very nature of our own being and awareness. And in this world, in truth, basically this world is nothing but our awareness made visible, our beliefs pushed out, expressed in a form. But a man does not know it. He does not believe it. Take the case of my friend. He changed his inner conversation very subtly, a private currency of his life itself, and it materialized into the remarkable transformation of his own boss. Even the nature of his boss changed. Who would have thought what we do in the privacy of our own mind, the quiet rehearsal, the secret expectation, could confront us so boldly, so loudly in the future, in the external reality of life itself? Who would have thought? So right now, let me tell you one of the most profound truths about the life itself, which one I've experienced firsthand, and one you can see if you look closely at your life. What we say, what we imagine, the inner conversation that we entertain does not fade away into the past. It does not vanish. It waits. It confronts us in the future, sometimes in the form of circumstances, sometimes in the form of people, and sometimes the situations that reflects the very nature of our private thoughts. And this is life. I have tested this countless time in my own life, and I live by it. I have witnessed people transformation just before my own eyes. People who by all appearances seemed beyond any hope of change. And yet in the midst of these experiences, I realized something very, very deeper. Something almost very humbling. The question was, how many times I have robbed people of their own honesty, their own gentleness, their very own simple nature, simply because what I entertained them to be in my own inner conversation. Because the scripture says, our whole life is our awareness and assumption pushed out. The truth is very clear. Our inner conversation shapes everything. It is the unseen force that molds character, circumstances, and the reality itself. And so may I say now, with certainty born of experience, of my own experience. Our inner conversation is the currency of life. You cannot hold it in your own hands. You cannot measure it with scales. Yet it is one of the most powerful force you will ever experience. It is the invisible wealth that builds your world moment by moment and thought by thought. And I would like to say something. What I share in this podcast is not rational. It is not at all rational to the rational mind. Many will not believe it, even if you show them. Even if they experience it themselves, this fact about the life, it seems that man has an inclination somewhat deep in their heart towards the negativity, towards expecting the worst in their own life. Think about it. Who does not prepare for all the negative outcomes even before approaching a situation? And yet somehow he expects the results to be different. We have natural tendency as a human to think about most of the negative situations or circumstances in our own life. It is much like trying to de-addict a person from a drug or some kind of alcohol. Even after realizing the harm of the drugs or alcohol, he returns to it again and again. Man loves to believe that the world is the problem. He is addicted to the world, its dramas and its conflicts, its endless turbulence, and yet paradoxically he seeks the enlightenment. But what enlightenment can one reach if one cannot de-addict himself from the world first? The very world he is entangled in. The true freedom, the true understanding comes only when you withdraw from the addiction of the circumstances, to the other people's behavior, to the noise of the life itself. Only then you do the touch the exact truth of life, the eternal reality of man. The truth is very simple and yet profound, and the reality is your I amness. This is the unchanging essence, the I am, the eternal witness, the awareness in which all of the life unfolds. But man do not believe it. He is addicted to the world of appearances. So now, after hearing this, coming to the very practical aspect of this podcast, which I always say, if you have a desire, and who doesn't? If you find yourself behind the 8 balls, if life seems to press in from all the sides, and this is precisely the moment to understand the power you carry. Perhaps it's the financial constraints, the debts, the bills, the rent overdue. It could be anything. Perhaps it's the relationship, which is already at its edges with the partner, with a parent, or maybe a friend. Perhaps it's the health concern or the weight of the situation itself that seems entirely beyond your control. It could be anything. The facts of the world appears completely opposite to you. And yet, here's the secret. You do not need to go anywhere. You do not need to wait. You can begin right here and right now. That's the power you hold. And if I were you, and my relationship with my parents was strained, or with my partner, or I was a distant person, or my logical mind told me that these situations are beyond my solution, any kind of solution or beyond my control, I would not run to temples or rituals or even advisors. I would come to myself. I would come to the one and only unchanging reality that I know I am is within me. And I would bow. Not outwardly, not at some kind of external gesture, no, but inwardly. In the sanctuary of my own eternal self, that is I am. Then I would build an internal conversation. My most intimate dialogue with the feeling. Feeling is important. With the vision, I would imagine a conversation in which my parent expresses their love and warmth to me, where the misunderstandings has dissolved before they even arise. I would rehearse internally, we laugh together, we support each other. I'd say this to myself. We respect and appreciate one another. Even my mind protests. I'll do it. Even my mind says, but they have always been critical, my parents. They may not change. What if they resist? I would let that thought pass. I would not entertain it. And I continuously return to the dialogue which I am creating to myself. And with my partner, I do the same. In my imagination, I would see us walking through the house, sharing jokes, resolving disagreements with love, holding hands, and enjoying life together. That's perfectly alright. I would imagine playing a beautiful morning, making breakfast, laughing over maybe some kind of spilled cup of coffee, or maybe sharing a quiet evening reading together. Even as my mind whispers, but we argued yesterday. Maybe it won't last. But I would not be deterred. I would persist in my internal conversation, feeling the real reality of love itself, the warmth and the harmony, as it's some kind of a truth and reality of my own life. I would not concern myself with how and when. That's not my domain. That's not my work. The universe or the law of consciousness operates beyond the limitation of time and space. My job is very simple. Just simply to assume and persist. I assume what I want already exists. I bring it to my own awareness and I carry it in front of my own mind in the form of internal conversation. I embody it, I feel it, I live it in the theater of my own mind. Because if the scriptures are true, your scriptures, not mine, the very scripture that in which one you already believe, then it is not a theory. This is the law. What you persistently entertain within your own inner conversation will manifest. And here's my promise. And here's my basic promise to you. If you build that conversation with feeling, and if you persist in it daily, if you embody it as it's some kind of a reality of your life, it will become the exact reality in your own life. Your relationships, your finances, your health, your entire world, all of it responds to the unseen dialogue that you carry, arguments that you continuously prepare, fears you rehearse all the time, the doubts you imagine, they too will manifest if you give them energy. So choose wisely. Rehearse love, maybe harmony, the prosperity, the joy. You persist in it. You feel it. Speak to it in your own mind as though it is already done. And you will see it reflected in your own outer world, often in the ways more profound than you can ever predicted it. And let me be clear this one more time. This is not something which I am telling you. No, not at all. You have been doing this particular thing or act of inner conversation building your whole life, just perhaps in the wrong direction, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps negatively. Every worry that you have entertained in your life, every argument you have rehearsed in your own mind, every fear that you have imagined, these have always been your investment of your own thought, and which is the currency of the life itself. Every inner conversation you have ever had, howsoever and how so much private, hidden, and maybe seemingly harmless, they are exactly what shapes your own reality. All I am asking you to do is turn this practice into your own favor. And that's all. Nothing more, nothing less. The scriptures have told us this very plainly. The mind is both the greatest enemy of man and the best friend of a man. And this is your own scripture. It is the creator and the destroyer. It binds you to the limitation when left unchecked, and it liberates you as well when you're consciously directing itself. And this is why I call your inner conversation as the currency of life itself. Just think about it. Currency is what buys you what you want in the external world. The coin, the bills, the digital number are just the symbolical. The one that literally determines your experiences of life is your attention, your feeling, your sustained inner conversation and thought. When you entertain fear and maybe resentment or maybe limitation, you're spending the exact currency against yourself. When you entertain a love, joy, harmony, and maybe belief in your desire which is already fulfilled. You are investing in your own future. And like any currency, the power grows when it's consciously and persistently used. It compounds over time. The smallest private thought, if nurtured and blossoms into events, the relationships, maybe circumstances, and the opportunity aligns with it perfectly. The richness of life is not outside of you. It is born from the way you use this currency in the every moment of your day. Imagine this, just imagine this. Every internal argument, every what if, every rehearsal of conflict or fear is a withdrawal. Every internal prayer, every imagining of peace, every feeling of gratitude and fulfillment is deposit. Your life balances itself according to these deposits and withdrawals. And the law is very simple. What you consistently invest in becomes your own world, becomes your own experience. So yes, you have been using this currency your whole life. Perhaps unwittingly, unknowingly, perhaps against your own self. All I am asking you is to consciously spend it in your own favor, to rehearse, to imagine, and to feel the life that you already desire, and watch the reality unfold completely in your own favor. And this is not a theory, this is life itself. And that's my main intention about creating these podcasts. This is the secret behind every fulfilled desire, every loving relationship, every breakthrough you ever seen in your own life. Your inner conversation, the thoughts, feeling, imagination that you carry is the truest currency you possess. Even though it's invisible, intangible, yet infinitely more powerful than anything you can touch. Use it wisely. Use it deliberately. Invest in it. The world you wish to see, you should invest in it. And it will manifest. So, I have said it before, and I say it more. It's your own scripture. Be a doer of the word, not just the hearer. Scriptures are not meant to be read. They're meant to be lived. And it simply and clearly says, the one who identified as free is indeed free. The one who identified as bound is indeed bound. Here, what people say is true. Whatever is one's thought or conviction, that indeed becomes one's destiny and state.